Hi everyone, it's Rachel back with the Shades of Orange. Today I'm here to do a video focusing on horror and thriller reads, specifically talking about some 2021 releases as well as some new favorites. Before I get started, I do want to do a quick booktuber shout out. I'm trying to remember these. And today I want to talk about Jordaline Reads. She is another female horror Canadian booktuber. And while we sound similar on paper, I've got to say that she is quite different from me in terms of her personality, at least on camera. She is so cool, so snarky, and so foul-mouthed. I really enjoy her channel. We read a lot of the same books, but we don't always have the same opinions. But I love hearing her talk about books regardless, even when we completely disagree. And I definitely recommend checking out her channel. She's gotten quite popular, but if you are one of the few people that are not yet subscribed, I definitely recommend checking out her videos. All that being said, let's talk about my own reading now. Now, first I want to talk about The Lost Village by Camilla Stein. This is one that I received from the publisher for review. This is a thriller that is set in a small town in the 1950s when everyone disappeared. There's also a present-day timeline when a filmmaker is going to investigate what happened to those residents, so they take in a documentary crew. I gotta say, I love the premise of this book. A creepy town, a mysterious disappearance, inclusion of social media and other technology. These are things I all love so much. But I gotta say that this book kind of let me down. And I think a lot of it comes from my expectations. I thought from the synopsis of this book, I expected it to be very creepy and atmospheric. I knew that it wasn't horror, but it was instead a thriller book, but I just did not find it very thrilling. It is very slow paced, at least at the beginning, and I just did not care enough about the characters for me to get really immersed in the story. Eventually, the story kicks into a higher gear, you find out what's going on, but I'll be honest, I just didn't quite care about the characters enough to get really pulled into the story at that point. So definitely a miss for me, but you might want to check it out for yourself. I am definitely still interested in reading more by this author, but this one just, missed the mark for me, unfortunately. Next, I want to talk about Whisper Down the Lane by McLeod Chapman. This is another one that I've received from the publisher. This is told over two timelines, one being back in the 80s when we follow a young boy named Sean. He accidentally says something that creates an allegation against his teacher, and things spiral from there. And then the other timeline is the present day. We follow a grown teacher named Richard who is in the school where he works, where he finds a dead rabbit. It is a class pet, and he begins to worry that there is something going on that is tied to his past and that possibly people know what is going on. These two timelines eventually do connect, and I'll be honest, I thought it was kind of obvious how they connected, but I will leave it there and just let you know that this book was different than I expected, but I really ended up enjoying the story that I got. So I expected this to be more of a horror story, because to me, I'd heard it marketed as a book for people who liked Dark Places by Gillian Flynn and other books that involve occult horror. And this just ended up being a little bit different. I would describe it as more of a thriller because it leans more into the side of realism, and specifically it focuses on the satanic panic, and it more focuses on the panic side of things rather than the Satan side of things. So if you're looking for a crazy occult horror book, this one is not that, but I will say that I ended up really enjoying the story I got because it was just very well told. I am someone who is fascinated by that period of the 80s when everyone was terrified of Dungeons and Dragons and Cabbage Patch dolls and all of these things, and I just think that this time period was very interesting, and the author did a really good job just showing the complexities of these situations that occurred, specifically focused on how young children were often mistakenly led to make these allegations because they were asked these really leading questions, and just the outcome of that. So this book deals with a lot of really serious subject matter, certainly a lot of content warnings, including of course the harm to animals that starts off the book. If you can get past those, I highly recommend trying this one out. It was, again, different than I thought it would be, but The story that was told was very compelling, and I enjoyed both timelines. I really liked the little boy Sean. He was very adorable to read about, and I liked the father figure too in the other timeline because he's a stepfather and also a teacher, and it just was a very complex and interesting take on the Satanic Panic. So if you're also really interested in that topic, I do recommend trying this one out for yourself. Next, I'm going to cheat and I want to talk about Beartown by Fredrik Backman, which is definitely not horror and not really a thriller. If anything, it's more a piece of general fiction, but it really captured my attention and it's become a new favorite, so I decided to sneak it into one of my videos. And this is about a hockey town where everyone is obsessed with the sports and the young athletes. In the story, there is an assault that happens and allegations are made, and the story is about how the town is divided between those that believe and support the victim and those that side with the hockey players. I think this book is super topical, and what it did so well, for me at least, was the characters that are extremely complex and morally gray and just very realistic. I personally really related to the perspective of the working mother because she's trying to balance being a good parent with having her own career, and yeah, I saw a lot of myself within her, and I just found the story so fascinating. I cannot believe how pulled into the story I was because, like I said, it's really not a thriller, but I do think it will appeal to those of you that like thrillers in the vein of something like Night Swim by Megan Golden. And yeah, I would love to see more people pick it up. So even if you don't normally read that genre, if you're like me and are willing to give it a try, I would love you to pick it up for yourself, and please let me know if you enjoy it. From there, I also want to mention The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson. This is a nonfiction true crime account that I read with my book club back in November, so it's about time I talked about it. This is told in two perspectives, one being following the creation of the World Fair in Chicago, and then it also follows the serial killer of H.H. Holmes. Not surprisingly, for anyone that knows me and my reading taste, I found the serial killer parts way more interesting. I did find the other parts honestly pretty dry, but going into this book, I knew very little about Holmes, so I did find those parts really interesting. And so I wish this book had been more serial killer, less World Fair, but if you enjoy nonfiction more than I do, it's definitely one you might want to consider picking up for yourself. Switching gears again, I also want to talk about a short story collection that I received for review, and that is Local Haunts, which is edited by Regina St. Clair. She has her own channel, Regina's Library, and she was so kind enough to send me a copy of this book, which is a collection of horror short stories all written by horror booktubers. I really love the inspiration behind this project, and I gotta say that it was a lot of fun to read books, or stories at least, by a lot of my fellow creators. And I will always say that I will be totally honest in my reviews, but I also need to acknowledge the fact that I am understandably biased when I'm reading books or stories that are written by friends of mine. And so the three stories that really stood out to me, the ones I'm going to highlight here, all happen to be by YouTube creators that I chat with online, that I love their videos, I watch them all the time. And so I definitely saw a lot of my biases coming in through my own reading. But the three I want to highlight, there is one by Jason White, which is about kids breaking into a house, and he's just such a good storyteller. I'm also not surprised that I connected with Cameron Chaney's work because I've read it before. This one is about a boy and his dog, and it is emotional and punches you in the emotional guts, and I loved it a lot. And probably my favorite was by Marie McWilliams, and that one is about a security guard that works on the Titanic exhibit at a museum, and I found that one to be really creepy and really atmospheric. So probably my all-time favorite of the collection was hers, but all three were fantastic. And if you are interested in checking this out for yourself, I always have links to Goodreads down below so you can find a copy wherever you'd like. And yeah, I just thought it was a lot of fun and a really cool project that Regina put together. And finally, I read a couple volumes of a graphic novel series called Vampirella, and this is about a female vampire hunter. And if you're ever watching my videos and wondering why I'm reading something particular, especially if it seems a little bit strange for me, it's usually because I'm working on a recommendations video. And that was the case here. This, of course, was included in my sexy horror book video that came out for Valentine's Day. I had a lot of fun filming that, so if you did miss it, I'm going to link it in the cards and description box. But I enjoyed this collection. I read a couple different volumes because some were more on the sexy side and some were a little bit more updated, and so the vampire hunter is wearing more clothes. So I will have links to both volumes that I finished, and you can decide for yourself which one is more up your alley. But yeah, that was a lot of fun. So that is it for this video. As always, let me know what you think of the books that I talked about here. If you're new to my channel, please consider subscribing. I do read a lot of horror, thrillers, as well as science fiction and fantasy, and I will definitely be reviewing more 2021 releases as the year goes on, so stay tuned for that. If you're already subscribed, thank you so much. You can still help me out with a thumbs up, hitting that notification bell, and sharing this around online. Don't forget to also subscribe to Jordaline Reads channel if you haven't already. And you know what? I will talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.